Lena stood in her cozy kitchen, the aroma of roasted chicken wafting through the air as she set the table for dinner. The soft glow of the pendant lights created a warm atmosphere, perfect for a family meal. At 32, Lena had built a life she was proud of, a successful career as a fashion designer, a loving husband named Mark, and their bright-eyed 10-year-old son, Ethan, who was currently humming a tune as he played with his toys in the living room. As she arranged the plates, Lena felt a sense of contentment wash over her. She had always dreamed of this life, filled with laughter and love. But just as she was about to call Ethan to the table, her phone buzzed on the counter, breaking the peaceful moment. Curious, she picked it up and saw a message from Mark. Her heart raced as she read the words, "Lena, I need to talk. Sophie needs our support. I'm moving in with her." The message felt like a punch to the gut. She blinked, trying to process what she had just read. Mark had always been the rock in their family, the one she could rely on, but now, with those few words, he had shattered her world. The next message came through and her stomach dropped further. She's pregnant. Lena's mind raced. Sophie, her younger sister, the one she had practically raised after their mother passed away, was now at the center of this betrayal. How could Mark do this to her? How could he turn their family upside down so easily? Taking a deep breath, Lena forced herself to remain calm. She called Ethan down for dinner, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. As they sat down to eat, the normalcy of the moment felt surreal. The laughter, the clinking of utensils, the warmth of the home, it all felt like a cruel joke. Lena's heart was heavy, but she knew she had to keep it together for Ethan. She would not let this betrayal define her. As she put down her fork, she typed a simple response to Mark. "Congratulations." No anger, no tears, just that one word. If he thought she would break down, he was in for a surprise. The signs had been there all along, she realized. The late nights at work, the way he had been overly generous with Sophie, always checking in on her. Lena had never questioned it. After all, family was supposed to support one another. But now it all made sense. As she finished dinner, Lena felt a flicker of determination ignite within her. She would not be a victim in this situation. She would take control of her life and protect her son. The moment dinner ended, Lena excused herself and retreated to her home office, a small sanctuary filled with sketches and fabric swatches. She needed to think. The betrayal weighed heavily on her, but she refused to let it crush her spirit. Instead, she began to piece together the events that had led to this moment. 3 months ago, while folding Mark's clothes, she had stumbled upon a receipt tucked into the pocket of his jacket. It was for a hotel, dated on a night he claimed he was out with friends. At the time, she had brushed it off, convincing herself that it was just a misunderstanding. But now, looking back, she could see the cracks in their marriage that she had ignored. Lena recalled the late-night phone calls, the way Mark had started spending more time away from home. He had been so eager to help Sophie move into her new apartment, always offering to lend a hand. Lena had thought it was sweet, never suspecting that it was a cover for something far more sinister. As she sat at her desk, Lena felt a surge of anger mixed with sadness. How could he betray her like this? They had built a life together, a family that included Ethan, who adored his father. The thought of Mark abandoning them for her sister was unbearable. But Lena was not one to wallow in despair. She had always been resourceful, and this situation called for a plan. She opened her laptop and began researching divorce proceedings, gathering information on how to protect herself and her son. The next morning, she woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. After sending Ethan off to school, she made her first call to a lawyer she had discreetly consulted a few weeks prior. They had discussed the possibility of divorce, but now it felt all too real. "Lena, I've been expecting your call," her lawyer said, her voice calm and reassuring. "We can start the process immediately. The first step is to freeze all shared accounts." Lena nodded, her heart racing. She had already anticipated this move. Mark thought he had drained their joint account, but she had quietly moved her personal savings into a separate account weeks ago, leaving just enough in the joint account to avoid suspicion. "Let's do it," Lena replied, her voice steady. "I want to protect my assets and ensure Ethan is taken care of." As the lawyer outlined the next steps, Lena felt a sense of empowerment wash over her. She was taking control of her life, and there was no turning back. After hanging up, she took a deep breath and glanced around her home. This was her sanctuary, the place where she had built her dreams. She would not let Mark or Sophie take that away from her. With determination in her heart, Lena began to prepare for the battle ahead. She would not only fight for her rights, but also for her son's future. The following days were a whirlwind of activity for Lena. She moved through her routine with a sense of purpose, each task a step closer to reclaiming her life. After dropping Ethan off at school, she returned home and began to implement her plan. First, she contacted a locksmith to change the locks on their home. Mark had no idea that she was already one step ahead. When the locksmith arrived, Lena watched as he replaced the old locks with new ones, a sense of satisfaction washing over her. This house was hers, and she would not let Mark waltz back in as if nothing had happened. Once the locks were changed, Lena felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She was taking control, and it felt liberating. That evening, after putting Ethan to bed, she poured herself a glass of wine, a small indulgence she had been saving for a special occasion. Tonight felt special enough. As she sipped her wine, her phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "I know this is hard for you, but Sophie is scared. We never meant for this to happen. Please don't make this ugly." Lena couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Ugly? He thought she was the one making this ugly? She took a slow sip of her wine, savoring the moment, and then forwarded the message to her lawyer. "Let him think he can manipulate me," she muttered to herself, feeling a surge of confidence. She typed her response. "I understand. Take care of her." Mark was likely expecting a breakdown, tears, or a desperate plea for him to reconsider. But Lena had given him nothing, just a simple, cold response. She imagined him staring at his phone, waiting for her to fall apart. But she had already put the first part of her plan into motion. The next morning, Lena woke up early, ready to face the day. She prepared breakfast for Ethan, keeping her demeanor light and cheerful. "Where's Dad?" Ethan asked, his brow furrowed as he grabbed his backpack. "Had to go help Aunt Sophie with something," Lena replied, forcing a smile. It wasn't a lie, but it felt like one. Ethan shrugged, too preoccupied with his own thoughts to question it further. Once Ethan was off to school, Lena made her next call. "It's time," she said to her lawyer. "Let's freeze all shared accounts." As the lawyer confirmed the action, Lena felt a rush of adrenaline. She was taking back her power, and it felt exhilarating. By noon, she had filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery. The paperwork was a necessary step, but it also felt like a declaration of her independence. She was no longer just a wife, she was a woman reclaiming her life. That afternoon, as she reviewed legal documents, her phone buzzed again. It was Mark. "What the hell, Lena? You changed the locks." She let the message sit for a moment, allowing herself a small smile. "Oh, I didn't change the locks. The owner of the house did," she typed back, relishing the thought of his confusion. Minutes later, another message came through. "You can't do this. I need to come back and get my stuff." Lena's heart raced with satisfaction. "My stuff, not our stuff," she replied, feeling a sense of triumph. As the day wore on, Lena continued to focus on her son and her work. She was determined to keep her life as normal as possible for Ethan. That evening, when he asked if his dad would be home for dinner, she knelt beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "Daddy is staying with Aunt Sophie for a little while," she said gently. "Why, son?" Ethan asked, his innocent eyes searching hers for answers. Lena hesitated, unsure of how to explain betrayal to a 10-year-old without breaking his heart. Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices, she said carefully, and when they do, they have to live with the consequences. Ethan nodded, accepting her words without further question. As Lena tugged him into bed that night, she felt a sense of resolve. She was ready for whatever came next. The following days unfolded like a carefully orchestrated plan. Lena maintained her composure, focusing on her work and Ethan while preparing for the inevitable confrontation with Mark. She knew he would not take the news of the divorce lightly, and she was ready for the storm that was about to come. As the weekend approached, Lena received a call from her lawyer. "Lena, I wanted to give you a heads up. Mark's attorney reached out. He's claiming you acted maliciously by freezing the accounts," her lawyer explained, her tone professional yet sympathetic. Lena couldn't help but smirk. "Did you tell them I did it legally?" she asked, her confidence growing. "Of course," her lawyer replied with a chuckle. "And that the house was never his? That seems to be a surprise to him." Lena felt a rush of satisfaction. Mark had always been reckless with money, spending lavishly on himself while she managed their finances. Now he was facing the consequences of his actions, and she was ready to watch it unfold. Later that day, as she was reviewing some designs for her upcoming fashion line, her phone buzzed again. It was a text from Mark. "You can't just leave us with nothing, Lena. Emily is pregnant, and we're starting a family." Lena rolled her eyes at the audacity of his message. "You abandon your first family without hesitation," she typed back, her fingers flying over the screen. "Now you expect sympathy for creating a new one?" She hit send and felt a sense of empowerment wash over her. Mark had made his choices, and now he had to face the reality of those decisions. The next morning, Lena received another call from her lawyer. "You won't believe this," she said, barely containing her laughter. "Mark tried to withdraw money from his personal accounts this morning. Apparently his credit cards are maxed out." Lena raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "So he's realizing he has no financial safety net." "Exactly," her lawyer confirmed. "He thought he could live off your money while playing happy family with Sophie. Now he's realizing he has nothing." Lena felt a mix of satisfaction and pity. She had once loved Mark, but his betrayal had changed everything. He had made his bed, and now he had to lie in it. As the days turned into weeks, the legal battle intensified. Mark's attorney reached out, requesting a meeting to negotiate. Lena's lawyer advised her to remain firm. Given that he abandoned the marriage and engaged in adultery, the courts won't be in his favor, she assured Lena. Lena felt a sense of relief. She had spent years compromising and sacrificing for Mark, and now it was time for her to stand her ground. One afternoon, as she was finalizing some designs for her boutique, her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Hesitant, she answered, and to her surprise, it was Sophie. "Lena, please, I need to talk to you." Sophie's voice trembled on the other end. Lena took a deep breath, bracing herself for the conversation. "What do you want, Sophie?" "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen," Sophie stammered, her voice cracking. Lena felt a flicker of sympathy but quickly pushed it aside. "You made your choice, Sophie. Now you have to live with it." Sophie continued, her voice shaky. "Mark wants to move into my apartment, but it's so small. He said maybe we could." Lena cut her off, a smirk forming on her lips. "I'm afraid Mark won't be able to move back here. He doesn't live here anymore." There was a pause on the line, and Lena could almost hear Sophie's breath hitch. "What do you mean?" "I mean the house is mine. He has no claim to it," Lena replied, relishing the moment. After hanging up, Lena felt a sense of triumph. Mark had thought he could manipulate both her and Sophie, but he was about to learn the hard way that Lena was not someone to be trifled with. As the days passed, the tension between Lena and Mark escalated. He was desperate to regain control, but Lena had firmly established her boundaries. One evening, as she was preparing dinner for Ethan, her phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "What the hell, Lena? You changed the locks." Lena took a deep breath, trying to suppress a smile. She typed back, "Oh, I didn't change the locks. The owner of the house did." Moments later, another message came through. "You can't do this. I need to come back and get my stuff." Lena felt a surge of satisfaction. "My stuff, not our stuff," she replied, her fingers dancing over the screen. She could practically hear his frustration through the text. That evening, as she sat down with Ethan for dinner, she noticed the worry etched on his face. "Is Dad coming home?" he asked, his voice small. Lena knelt beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Daddy is staying with Aunt Sophie for a little while," she said gently. "While?" Ethan pressed, his innocent eyes searching hers for answers. Lena hesitated, unsure of how to explain betrayal to a child without breaking his heart. "Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices," she said carefully. "And when they do, they have to live with the consequences." Ethan nodded, accepting her words without further question. As the days turned into weeks, Lena continued to focus on her work and her son. She poured her energy into her fashion designs, finding solace in her creativity. But Mark was relentless. He sent her a barrage of messages, each one more desperate than the last. "Lena, please, we need to talk. I'm sorry for everything," he texted one day. Lena felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a strange sense of relief. She had moved on, and she wasn't about to let him back into her life. "Figure it out yourself," she replied, blocking his number once again. The following week, Lena received a call from her lawyer. "You're not going to believe this," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "Mark is being evicted from Sophie's apartment." Lena's heart raced. "Evicted? How?" Apparently the lease was only in her name, and because she hasn't been able to keep up with the rent, the landlord served them an eviction notice last night, her lawyer explained. Lena let out a low whistle. "So they're both homeless?" "It seems so," her lawyer confirmed. "Mark must have assumed he could live off of you forever. He clearly wasn't planning on supporting Sophie." Lena felt a strange mix of satisfaction and pity. Mark had abandoned his family for a fantasy, and now he was facing the harsh reality of his choices. That evening, as Lena tucked Ethan into bed, she couldn't shake the feeling of empowerment. She had taken control of her life, and it felt liberating. But the next morning, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hesitant, she answered, already suspecting who it was. "Lena, you had no right to do this to me." Mark's voice came through, filled with desperation. "You froze the accounts and left me with nothing." Lena smirked, leaning back in her chair. "Do what, Mark? Leave you to deal with the mess you created? You can't just throw me out like trash," he spat, his frustration palpable. Lena felt a surge of confidence. "You made your choices, Mark. Now you get to live with them, just like Sophie does." As the conversation continued, Lena felt a sense of closure. Mark was no longer the man she had loved. He was a shadow of his former self, desperate and lost. After hanging up, Lena took a moment to collect herself. She had fought hard for her independence, and she wasn't about to let Mark's pleas pull her back into his chaos. As the weeks rolled on, Lena found herself thriving in her newfound independence. She poured her energy into her fashion boutique, which had been her dream for years. With each design she created, she felt a sense of empowerment and freedom that she hadn't experienced in a long time. One afternoon, while reviewing her latest collection, Lena received a call from her lawyer. "Lena, I have some updates regarding your divorce proceedings," her lawyer said, her tone professional yet upbeat. "Mark's attorney has requested a meeting to negotiate a settlement." Lena raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What are they hoping for?" "They're likely hoping you'll be reasonable," her lawyer replied, "but given the circumstances, I don't think the courts will be in his favor." Lena felt a rush of satisfaction. Mark had made his choices, and now he was facing the consequences. "Let's set up the meeting," she said, her voice steady. "I'm ready to finalize this." As the meeting approached, Lena prepared herself mentally. She knew Mark would try to manipulate the situation, but she was determined to stand her ground. On the day of the meeting, Lena arrived at the law office, her heart racing with anticipation. She wore a tailored blazer that made her feel powerful and confident. As she entered the conference room, she saw Mark sitting at the table, looking disheveled and defeated. "Lena," he said, his voice strained, "I didn't expect you to look so put together." She raised an eyebrow, refusing to let his comment affect her. "I'm here to discuss the divorce, Mark. Let's keep this professional." The meeting began, and Mark's attorney laid out their proposal. They wanted to negotiate a financial settlement, but Lena's lawyer quickly countered, emphasizing that Mark had abandoned their marriage and engaged in adultery. As the discussion continued, Lena felt a sense of empowerment wash over her. She was no longer the woman who had been blindsided by betrayal. She was a strong, independent woman ready to reclaim her life. When it was her turn to speak, Lena took a deep breath. "I've spent years compromising and sacrificing for this family," she said, her voice steady. "But I will not allow Mark to manipulate me any longer. I deserve to be treated with respect." Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. "You're being unreasonable, Lena. We can work this out." Lena shook her head. "No, Mark. You made your choices, and now you have to face the consequences. I'm not interested in playing games anymore." The meeting ended with no resolution, but Lena felt a sense of victory. She had stood up for herself, and that was a win in itself. As she left the law office, Lena felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She was ready to move forward, to embrace her new life without Mark. That evening, as she tucked Ethan into bed, she felt a sense of peace. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, his innocent eyes searching hers. Lena smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "I'm more than okay, sweetheart. I'm free." Ethan nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Good. I like it when you're happy." As Lena closed the door to Ethan's room, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was ready to build a future for herself and her son, one that was filled with love, creativity, and independence. With the divorce proceedings still looming, Lena focused on her boutique and her designs, channeling her emotions into her work. Each day brought new challenges, but she faced them with a determination she hadn't known she possessed. The support from her friends and the community around her fueled her passion, and she began to see her dreams materialize. One sunny Saturday, Lena decided to host a small launch event for her latest collection. She invited friends, family, and loyal customers to celebrate her journey and showcase her designs. The boutique was filled with vibrant colors, beautiful fabrics, and the buzz of excitement. As the guests arrived, Lena felt a sense of pride swell within her. She had transformed her pain into something beautiful, and now she was ready to share it with the world. "Lena, this is amazing," her friend Mia exclaimed, admiring a dress on display. "You've really outdone yourself." "Thank you. I wanted to create something that reflects strength and resilience," Lena replied, her heart swelling with joy. As the evening progressed, Lena mingled with her guests, sharing stories about her designs and the inspiration behind them. She felt a sense of belonging, a stark contrast to the isolation she had felt during her marriage. Just as she was about to give a speech, her phone buzzed with a message from her lawyer. "Lena, Mark's attorney has reached out again. They want to negotiate a settlement before the court date." Lena took a deep breath, her heart racing. She knew this was a pivotal moment. "I'll think about it," she replied, putting her phone away. With a glass of champagne in hand, Lena stepped onto a small platform to address her guests. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This collection is not just about fashion, it's about reclaiming my identity and embracing new beginnings. I've learned that strength comes from within, and I'm excited to share this journey with all of you." The crowd erupted in applause, and Lena felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She was surrounded by people who believed in her, and that made all the difference. As the night wore on, Lena received a message from Mark. "I hope you're happy with your little party. Just remember, I still have rights." Lena's heart sank for a moment, but she quickly reminded herself of her strength. She typed back, "I'm happy, Mark, and I'm ready to move on." The next day, Lena met with her lawyer to discuss Mark's latest proposal. "He's offering a settlement that includes some financial support for Ethan," her lawyer explained, "but it's not what you deserve." Lena considered the offer carefully. "I don't want to be tied to him any longer than necessary. I want to ensure Ethan is taken care of, but I won't accept anything that feels like a compromise." Her lawyer nodded in agreement. "That's the right mindset. We'll counter with a proposal that reflects your contributions to the marriage and your current situation." As they crafted the counteroffer, Lena felt a sense of empowerment. She was no longer the woman who had been manipulated. She was a force to be reckoned with. A few days later, Lena received a call from her lawyer. "Mark has agreed to your terms," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "The settlement is finalized, and you're officially free." Lena felt a rush of emotions, relief, joy, and a sense of closure. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "I can finally move on." That evening, as she tucked Ethan into bed, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" he asked, his eyes wide with concern. "Absolutely, sweetheart. We're going to be better than okay. We're going to thrive," Lena replied, her heart swelling with love for her son. As she closed the door to Ethan's room, Lena took a moment to reflect on her journey. She had faced her fears, reclaimed her identity, and built a life filled with love and creativity. With a renewed sense of purpose, Lena was ready to embrace whatever came next. She was no longer defined by her past. She was a woman ready to write her own story. With the divorce finalized, Lena felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had fought hard for her independence, and now she was ready to embrace the future. The boutique was thriving, and her designs were gaining recognition in the local fashion community. Each day brought new opportunities, and Lena was determined to seize them. One afternoon, as she was preparing for a fashion show featuring her latest collection, Lena received an unexpected call from Mia. "Lena, I have some exciting news. There's a local fashion festival coming up, and I think you should showcase your designs there," Mia said, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm. Lena's heart raced at the thought. "Really? That sounds amazing. But do you think I'm ready for something like that?" "Absolutely. You've come so far, and this is your chance to shine. I'll help you with the preparations," Mia assured her. Feeling a surge of excitement, Lena agreed. They spent the next few weeks preparing for the festival, working late into the night to perfect the collection. Lena poured her heart and soul into each piece, determined to make a lasting impression. As the day of the festival approached, Lena felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. She had come so far from the woman who had once felt trapped in her marriage. Now she was ready to showcase her talent and share her story with the world. On the day of the festival, the atmosphere was electric. Lena arrived early to set up her booth, her heart pounding with excitement. As the crowd began to gather, she felt a sense of pride wash over her. This was her moment. When it was time for her collection to be showcased, Lena stood backstage, her heart racing. She watched as the models walked down the runway, wearing her designs with confidence. The audience erupted in applause, and Lena felt tears of joy welling in her eyes. After the show, Lena was approached by several attendees who praised her work. "Your designs are incredible. I'd love to feature them in my boutique," one woman said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Lena beamed with pride. "Thank you so much. I'd love that." As the festival continued, Lena felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. She was surrounded by people who appreciated her talent and believed in her vision. Later that evening, as she celebrated with Mia and friends, Lena reflected on her journey. She had faced her fears, reclaimed her identity, and built a life filled with love and creativity. "Lena, you did it. This is just the beginning," Mia said, raising her glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," Lena replied, her heart full of hope and gratitude. As the night wore on, Lena felt a sense of peace. She had finally closed the chapter on her past and was ready to embrace the future. In the weeks that followed, Lena's boutique flourished, and she received offers to collaborate with other designers. She was invited to showcase her work at more events, and her reputation in the fashion community continued to grow. Through it all, Lena remained focused on what mattered most, her son Ethan. She made sure to involve him in her journey, teaching him the importance of resilience and following one's dreams. One evening, as they sat together drawing designs, Ethan looked up at her with wide eyes. "Mom, can I be a designer like you when I grow up?" Lena smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "Of course, sweetheart. You can be anything you want to be." As she tucked Ethan into bed that night, Lena felt a sense of fulfillment. She had not only reclaimed her identity, but had also created a loving environment for her son. With a renewed sense of purpose, Lena was ready to embrace whatever came next. She was no longer defined by her past. She was a woman ready to write her own story, one filled with love, creativity, and endless possibilities.